My name is Troels, and in this video we're going to take a deep comprehensive look at our new Epic Taiko Ensemble, which is a completely remastered, redesigned and reprogrammed version of our original Epic Taiko Ensemble, which was released almost like 5 years ago. It's actually one of the launch products for 8DO. And this library has always been standing near to me. I think it still stands as the strongest Epic Taiko Ensemble library on the market, but there's so much gold in the content, and we really felt like, okay, we could take it to the next level. We've learned so much in terms of scripting systems. We've learned more about mastering, polishing the samples, all that stuff. And we've also learned a lot more about the consumer experience, whether it's our chaos effects here, or our new front-faced effects here, or our new textual convolution delays down here. There's so many things we've learned and that the library really deserves. So without further ado, let's try to go into it. And this video, I'm going to do a little bit different than my normal videos. I'm actually going to be playing you the main demo up here, and if you see here, you can actually see all the different channels used for it, and I've also included that with the library, so you can load the MIDI file into your DAW, and I also created a multi here, which is the one you're going to be seeing here in this demo, which also comes with the library. So you can essentially recreate everything I'm doing here and really learn more about Taiko programming. There's a lot of neat little tricks, and I'll be going through some of them here in the video as well. So yeah, let's just get started here. Let me just play the demo in its entirety, and then let's get into the nitty-gritty of the different layers and aspects of programming taikos. And I should probably point out that everything you're hearing here is coming from the Taiko library. So the MIDI sequence you're going to be loading into your DAW, including the multi here, is everything you've just heard. But let's try to go into it. So the way I think about taikos is essentially like a drum kit. You have the deep drums that sort of symbolizes the bass drum. You got the shemas, they're called, which symbolizes a snare. You can do a bunch of rolls, both with sticks and the snare as well, and sort of tune them up so they become more like hi-hatty, particularly with the sticks. But I'll try to isolate here. Let me play a little bit with the shema first here, which is the snare drum. Let me just hold it right there, actually. A really good trick with these things, and something I like, because we have so many round robin in this library, meaning repetition notes, you can actually do these very, very fluent rolls. I do them with the sticks too, on top of the shemas, and it just gives a wonderful, very, very live-like effect. And you can see everything here is sort of sequenced to the grid. And sometimes I'll be sequencing my percussion to the grid, other times I'm going to be doing loose. The roll here is obviously done loose. Let's play it again. So as you can see here, starting up here, we have the roll, and then we sort of go into more sequence kind of drum stuff. Let me look over here. I think there's another part here where it gets kind of interesting. Yeah, here. For traditional taiko, obviously it only has one pitch, but one of the wonders of software is that you can play multiple pitches. So you can hear the pitch sort of drop, and then, and these things here actually just play in hand with these sort of small rolls where you just like a little fast triplet. I like to play them just in hand like that. You can see they're kind of loose on the grid, but it just gives a more lifelike feel. Check them out. So it almost becomes like a legato fashion rip kind of sound. So it's a really neat trick for getting more of that sort of live feel in it. Next up is our huge edge articulation. These are actually the odaikos played, but more on the edge of the drum. It's not a rim shot. It's sort of just hitting the stick on somewhere between the rim and the outer skin of the drum. It gives a very, very sort of percussive, strong, tight effect. I love using them because they're tonal, but they have a sort of tight sound to them as well. So obviously there's a bunch of things going on. You can see me do these hand rolled effects again, and then sort of the drop in pitch. So check it out. And again, if you look closely here at the grid, you can actually see all these things are hand played. They're not totally on the grid. And it's really, really like rule number one almost for percussive programming, that you sort of have some things on the grid, you have other things loosely on the grid. And in this case, you can see there some a little earlier, some a little later. The rolls are totally like almost chaotically hand played here. And when I really want to mark or accentuate a hit, I just play more keys and I play them really hard. You can see there's 6 layers here of the drum. Another feature in real taiko ensembles is that the group will sometimes yell to each other. There'll be yells and they're sort of both accentuated with the drums, but there's also communicating. You'll have a leader normally sort of indicating where we are. And sometimes they can also be used sort of for percussive effects. So I have a bunch of these kind of yells in the library, or shouts if you will. You can see them sort of all over here. Let's take a little look. And it's not that you necessarily notice them so much, but I like to use them sort of both for transitional pieces. So you just sort of go, whoa, and then bang, you hit it. It's almost like a drop in EDM. But you can also use them sort of for percussive things. So these small, I'll use them with the rhythm as well. So sometimes the whole group will stop and they'll just yell. So you can do them different ways, but try to think about how you would sort of yell or talk to the group while you're doing it. And I think it's really important, and this is a good trick for sequencing in general. Try to sing the sample sometimes, like, and when you make grooves here, like try to feel, okay, what would actually make sense? How would I play my taiko drum kit, so to speak, and give room for the elements? I hear a lot of people just stacking and stacking. Now, obviously doing that in this demo as well, but there's a lot of syncopations. There's a lot of isolation of different things. So sometimes the rim shots will be very accentuated and then they die again, the drums take over again. And that's sort of thinking about the drum kit as well. You wouldn't just play the snare drum and the bass drum all the time. You sort of accentuate different parts at different times. So really expand the notion of what a groove could be and think about that isolation of elements. Really, really important. And speaking of rim shots, let's take a look at them actually, because I use them quite a lot. Isn't that just the coolest sound? I just love that roll here. Check it out again. It's just beautiful. It's almost like water being poured into a cup. And as you can probably hear, there's some delay going on. Let me just make sure we got it down here. That was the shouts, and down here we got the medium rims. Let me play a little more here, and as you can see, all these things here are played completely loose. There's no sequencing of these elements here, and it just gives more life in the sample here. Let's hear a few more things. And as you can see here, there's just a crazy amount of notes. Let me move a little further into the sequence here. You can see I'm actually using that roll motion several times here. It's just beautiful. This is actually a good example of one of the features here in our new Epic Taiko Ensemble. We have delay down here, obviously on the front end of the interface. And one of the other beautiful things when you use the library here, you can see in the multi that I just have multiple instances loaded. But because we have an internal articulation browser in the library here, you can actually just immediately dial in whatever articulation you wanted. If you remember the old library, actually have to load separate NKIs for each articulation here. So everything is actually loaded into RAM, including over 3,000 loops and all the thousands and thousands of multi-samples here as well. Another cool feature here is our main master patch. Let me just go down here and check it out here. So this is very similar to our old master patch in terms of its layout. You can actually duplicate it, but there's a lot of polish in it, so it's a lot more playable and tight than the original master patch was. But and for you guys who are not familiar with the master patch, this essentially contains all the individual multi-samples in the library, and we've actually duplicated them over the keyboard. So you have sort of the deep range down here, and then you have a medium range here, and then you have an upper range here. And there's thousands and thousands of samples in the master patch here, and it's just great if you really just want to get your taiko on and not really bother so much about individual patches and all that stuff. You can have total fun with the master patch here. Let me show you a little bit. And in this case, I'm actually using the master kit as a hi-hat kind of tool. You can hear it's definitely up pitched. Let me just tune it down here a little bit. I'll tune it down to its normal range. And you actually also have you have pitch control up here, but you also have pitch control down here on our front face effects. You have a micro tuner down here, so you can really do delicate tuning, and then you have a sort of a master pitch in here. So right now, let me just play again what you heard, but this time in a normal pitch range. And I'll just turn up to 8 here again. And this is a good example again. The master patch, again, you can play with it totally in its full form, or you can use it for alternative means here. And if you noticed as well, there's sort of a weird alarm sound going on. Let me just play one note here, and then here's sort of this weird like wow, 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 sort of on the tail end of the sound. You You probably heard that, and that's actually our transform down here. We added a bunch of textual convolution delays, which is something we also have in our Blend instrument and a variety of our upcoming instruments. And this means that you have a variety of convolutions here, but they're not traditional convolutions in the sense that you use them for reverbs or whatever. These guys are actually designed to be used sort of as a textual convolution delay, meaning that you don't only get the delay of the actual taiko, which we also have here in this sound, but you also get a more textual, different kind of sounding delay. And it's really a great way of sort of sound manipulating the library a little more. And we have over, I think there's like 130 different ones here. So you can really push it to the next level in terms of sound design and make the taikos just more than just taiko sounds. Let's go to the next one here. This is another iteration of our huge edge. I actually use it sort of for additional definition. Sometimes just one instance is not enough. So I actually have two instances here of this huge edge kind of thing. And I layer them on top of each other and just gives more muscle and more beefiness to the whole thing. And that's a good example. You could probably hear those bass that went doom, 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 doom. Let me try to play it here without isolating it here so you can hear how it actually works. In this case, this thing actually functions a little bit the opposite of the master patch, which is more hi-hatty. This one is almost like a bass drum, but a little more almost 808ish, like in terms of actually have almost a tonal quality. So go doom, doom, doom. Let me just play the whole thing here. And again, it sort of goes back to the notion of a drum kit. Obviously, you can see me use different elements. It would be sort of logical to say, oh, the main master would sort of be the deep one. But in this case, I tuned it up because I needed more of sort of hi-hat elements. And speaking of layers, as you can see here, I actually created another version of the shema drums again. So these would be the snares. Let's just listen to these guys. Isn't that cool? Let me just go down here. I think it's, let's see, it's number 7 here. So this is a really good example of a little more manipulation of the shema here. So you can see that if you look down here on our front face effects, there's a lot of delay on it. I'm using both microphone positions. We both have close and far mics in the library. And the microphones are a really useful feature for dialing in the sound, how tight you want it. If you really want a close mix, you essentially just click off here and unload the far mic. But if you want a more powerful epic mix, you sort of want to add some of that in. There's more beefiness. The microphones were really far down the hall. So you could really get a more full, rich sound, and that can be useful here for certain things like the shemas and the big drums as well. So this one for me was cool because it became more tonal. It sort of have a very distinct sound, like do-do-do-do-do. So a good example of really pushing the library sort of into a new sphere of sound, and you can see here the pitch is sort of rather dialed up here. So we're obviously not in normal pitch, and I should also say for all these patches here, you actually have like 4 or 5 octaves of tonal control as well, so you can really control the individual sounds to perfection. And as you've noticed here as well, we have a mod sequencer. I'm not using that in this demo, but this is essentially a step-based, velocity-based sequencer. So if you want to dial in a specific groove, you can do that here, and you can actually do sort of somewhat extensive grooves here. So if you want to do very advanced groove manipulation here and have them play over and over, you can do that as well. You can also do triplets. You can sort of randomize it as well. And it'll actually randomize it based on what you've done. So let's say you have a very unique figure, but you want to randomize it a little bit. You'll somewhat stay faithful to your original layout here of the step sequencer. So it's a really cool feature, and you can also click here to reset the whole thing. And yeah, I should probably just, before we sort of wrap up the video, just describe very shortly what's going on here. You obviously have your articulation browser up here. You have your mod sequencer down here, and remember to click here if you want to activate it. You have your microphones here, and you can load and unload them here. You can also isolate them and all that stuff down here. Let me make sure I unclick it. You have our front face effects here. Again, the dynamics, the filter. You can also control filter types. You have pitch and micro pitch. You have delay and the type of delay if you want here. Let's see, for example, if you click out here, you can see the timing up here changes. Let me just get down to 16 again. There's a lot of manipulation you could do here in the front face. You also have bit crush and distortion here. And then you have our textual convolution delay down here. And you got equalizer as well. And as many of our other libraries here, you also got our chaos effects on the backside down here. So if you click effects down here, you get access to all the individual chaos effects. And there's so much you can do with those as well, whether it's like step-based filter sequencer or really go in and sort of manipulate our stereo delay or our 2 different convolutions. So it's not only that we have our textual convolutions here, but you actually also have a normal convolution reverb down here if you want to sort of take that further. And that could be cool to put on top of the mics as well if you want to have an even more distant far mic. If you really want to start layering and do multiple microphone positions, you can definitely play around with that as well. So I hope this little demo have given you a little insight here. The last layer down here is just a little more yelling yelling and scream, so I probably shouldn't waste your time with that. So let me just play through the whole composition again, and thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been insightful. And again, everything I'm doing here comes with the library. We have the MIDI sequence in the library here. We also have the multi here, so if you want to try out and see what I've done in even more detail, you have full access to that. So I hope this has been a little bit insightful in terms of how to program taikos, how to sort of think like a drummer, and sort of translate the philosophy from sort of drumming to taiko drumming, and thinking about isolation of elements, how it can sort of be musical so you're not just stacking. It's so obvious when you have epic libraries that you just want to stack and stack and stack, and that's great. The only problem is that sometimes people stack so much that the dynamic spectrum doesn't have any flexibility. You've pretty much pushed it to fortissimo right to begin with, and when you do that, you sort of lose the ability to sculpt your dynamics more. So if you just go full epic from the very get-go, you don't have so much room to play with. So the idea with this library is really to be flexible, and the way we've reprogrammed some of the velocity layers as well is really to be more musical, so you can really do more of that sort of flexibility in terms of sculpting your dynamics and your overall percussion programming. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching.